Joining me on this return of the TDL Profiles series after a 10 plus year hiatus, we have Mark Bergen. Mark is a tech reporter for Bloomberg and Business Week. He's here today. We're going to talk about his new book, Like, Comment, and Subscribe, Inside YouTube's Chaotic Rise to World Domination. Mark, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So in reading your book, I really enjoyed your book, and I always enjoy the palace intrigue of big media and tech. It reminded me a little bit of Late Shift about the Letterman and Leno wars back in the day, and that's always enjoyable. But then with YouTube, you have this whole other layer of the real world implications, literally life and death, uh, based on decisions they make. So, and that's really the meat of the book, and that feels very important. I'm curious, was there any particular reason that this felt like the right time to write this book?
I guess in some ways, I wish I'd written a little earlier. But I think I was started because I was doing some reporting on Bloomberg about sort of the inside YouTube and like a lot of its decision making, and it's like this really powerful and important platform that's really sort of overlooked in many ways, right? And this was during the flurry of attention around Facebook and Twitter. And I think what was interesting to me, it still is about YouTube, is it has the exact same content moderation and platform issues that those other social networks have, but then the added layer of it pays millions of people, millions of creators, has this like complex and knotty creator economy, and it went through starting in 2017 these like 2 or 3 years of like really just series of crises and like dramatic changes to how its business works and how it operates, and that was the catalyst for the book. Was like, wow, this is a really fascinating kind of whiplash for people that went through it. And they have the benefit of the fact that as interesting as the people that work for YouTube are, the creators are obviously like much more compelling characters and like fascinating people themselves. So that's like a gift for a storyteller.
When you think about those PR crises and changes with monetization and changes with algorithms and all that, did you find it hard to sort of put the pencil down and say, okay, I'm stopping right there, and we're doing the history up until that point? Because it seems like it's a ever increasing list of things they're dealing with there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's my first book, and it is books like I'm used to writing articles and where it can kind of like have an instantaneous reaction to something, and books just take a long time, and then you finish it. And I finished it in May, and then it came out in September, and so I was just praying to God that like nothing dramatic would happen. I think that certainly when I started this project in 2020, I had some inkling that TikTok was going to be big and influential and important. I didn't think it was going to be like driving a lot of YouTube decisions now, responding to TikTok. So I think there's a lot of that didn't make it in. Yeah, part of it is just like it's meant to be hopefully like a historical document that like live on. People will kind of turn to years from now to remember this like really critical period in the internet history, and like influential one. I think we're seeing like TikTok sort of repeating a lot of the same, the joys and delights of like early YouTube, and then some of the complications of that business model.
And of course, the rise of TikTok means fewer minutes spent on YouTube, and in response, we see YouTube Shorts. I'm curious, YouTube at times seems to want to chase what's popular. Do you get a sense of what the core principle is there? I mean, as soon as Shorts take off, okay, now we're into Shorts. Is there some sort of guiding principle at this point?
The company would always say sort of guiding principle is the audience, which I think is a little squishy, because I don't think they always make decisions based on the audience. But like audiences are clearly interested in short form video. I think you could say like Vine was a leading indicator of that, and even like early YouTube was an indicator of that, right? I mean, I think the listen, the principle is always going to be YouTube is, unless something dramatically changes, it's an advertising business. It is invested, like their key metric has been for the past decade is watch time, like getting people to stay engaged with videos for the longest time. That remains the key metric for shorts too. It's based on watch time, um, and that's like the sort of north star that they've adjusted a little bit and added in a few more metrics, and try to make it a little bit like kind of talk about valued watch time and like things that can avoid like problems with advertisers or regulators or critics like me. But it remains a company that's really focused on hitting metrics, and like getting watch time, and delivering like and getting their creators to improve watch time, which YouTube will say is a virtuous cycle. Like the more watch time you get, the better ads, the more ad money, the more creators make, the better for YouTube, the better for creators, which I think to a certain extent is true.
And I want to talk about that for a moment, especially the algorithm or algorithms more accurately. So, on a different channel, I have a feature length documentary. It's nothing controversial. And traditionally, that's had 20 to 40,000 views per month. And that has been for about the last year, year and a half. And then when September hit, that number plummeted to about 2 to 4,000 views, and consequently, about a 90% drop in revenue. So I managed to reach out to YouTube to try to get to the bottom of this. And I got a fairly generic response that, well, your revenue is in keeping with the estimate based on how many views you had, which was kind of not the point, right? So the point was, why did this, why did I have this 90% drop? And I'm curious whether you feel when something like that happens, do you think it's the algorithm and they truly don't know, or do you think it's YouTube not being fully transparent with changes they're making?
I think it depends on. I mean, there's a certain amount of like the algorithm. Like, it's as far as my understanding, it's not never like sort of a like one day we're going to on January 6th or something we're going to like switch like this, right? It's usually like a series of experiments and like A/B testing, and they're kind of constantly testing on different segments of viewers and types of videos, and like YouTube is kind of an incrementalist in some sense. There have been some key moments when they had to like make pretty dramatic changes based on like crises and advertisers are pooling money or like, and I think that's when you've seen Elsa Gate. If it's like 3 years ago now or 4 years ago, was God 5 years ago. Anyway, was a key moment then. But more often, like they're going to make these kind of incremental changes that will have. I mean, it's incremental's not the best work, and it's like small for YouTube, but they can have dramatic impact, like you mentioned. Um, so I mean, like yes, they're cagey. They're cagey with me. They're cagey with creators. And the idea is that if they reveal too much of their cards, like this is what they say is that they don't want people to game the system, um, which feels like a lame excuse. I do think that like something I learned about YouTube is that like it's a big bureaucratic place, and sometimes like I assume you were talking like a partner manager, right? Sometimes the partner managers don't necessarily like have the best line of into the engineers, and Google's an engineering company and run by engineers. So there are people there that are like, honestly, I have no idea what happened here. There's sort of traditionally been this firewall between some of the like organic search and discovery decisions they make and like the business side, and I think there's like good reason for that. But the consequence is often that they're like either cryptic or just non-communicative about major changes that like affect the creator.
It's just wild. I can't think of many other industries where you could have a 90% drop in revenue and no one needed to fully explain why
Totally.
that might occur. It's interesting. So they're so cagey and protective of the algorithm, and I understand that. But I'm curious, at the end of the day, this business is really videos are uploaded, videos are shared to super simplify it. Why do you think the Microsofts and Apples and Amazons, although Amazon has Twitch now, why do you think they haven't tried to replicate what YouTube does? Do you think part of it might be seeing the headaches and the hassle of doing this, or is it they feel they can't compete with that algorithm?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Twitch sort of has come close in like Twitch and TikTok. and like Twitches, they both kind of struggled in different ways. I think some of it is like Google does have the world's biggest, like the only company comes close as far as like digital advertising, like machinery and like plumbing, is Facebook, and Google is still like pretty far ahead of Facebook. They've just basically, like, if you think about YouTube, it is effectively like what Google's AdSense business, which has been like almost 20 years now. It's like we're gonna plaster banner ads everywhere on the internet and take a small cut. Like YouTube is basically just doing that with video. Um, when I say it that way, it sounds pretty simple, but like there's a lot of like nuts and bolts in place there, that I think gives Google an advantage. I've done some reporting that wasn't really in the book too, but like there are people that and like Google's under all sorts of antitrust scrutiny, and there are certainly people that think that they've like uh, been anti-competitive in a way that like keeps others from doing from like replicating their model. I think you mentioned Apple. I think Apple is less inclined to take the sort of content moderation approach that, like, they're not like Google or Facebook, where they're kind of like a free for all open platform. It's not really been their shtick. Twitter is one that has tried in video and failed. Like Facebook has tried to pay creators for a very long time and not been able to do it. I think Google has the benefit of having like a very profitable search business that like kept YouTube afloat for a long time, and to their credit, like they took the risk, and it's paid off, and that's like I think allowed them to have this pretty big lead.
Do you believe, in simplest terms, do you believe the way the system works, that good content will find its audience on YouTube? Or is that a little bit disingenuous when the company says that?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, because it's sort of like, you're like, I'm listen. I have this experience too, where I write. I mean, I don't make YouTube videos like Bloomberg. I work with Bloomberg stuff, but I write stories, and it's like, why aren't people reading this, right? Like, or I write a book, and it's like, why are people buying this? But, and so like it's hard to hear. It is. I don't. I think there are plenty of examples across YouTube's history of like not like poor quality content doing really well, performing really well. Um, I think that there's a really funny example in the book that I stole from. I didn't steal. I credited Matt Pat, the game theorist YouTuber, who's like really smart and been at YouTube for a long on YouTube for a long time. And I don't know if you remember this. It was 2014 or something, and Minecraft was huge. And like at one point, um, Minecraft like took over YouTube's
Mhm.
logged out homepage, and it was like more. I think it was like more than half. It was like all the Minecraft videos, and part of that was because the audience wanted Minecraft, right? Like, so YouTube, there's like an urban legend inside YouTube that like someone at Google saw the homepage and was like, why the hell is there so much Minecraft on the site? I asked them about it, like their lead engineer. It seemed their rationale was more like this was around the time they were trying to get more sort of daily users, trying to get like basically trying to get more mainstream appeal. Like
Mhm.
that, this was Susan Wojcicki came in 2014, and they wanted to basically break out of like the Minecraft. They wanted to have more appeal to like the moms, like average mom kind of thing, or grandma. And so they did make a fairly one of those examples where they made an algorithmic tweak, and you saw within the course of a few months, like Minecraft just drops off on traffic. And it's like, were the creators who were making those Minecraft videos started to make worse videos? Was there just like all those people were no longer interested in watching, or was it that the recommendation system started to like deprioritize it?
Right.
And I think it's probably hard to argue. That's a really good example where it seems like the last one had the biggest impact, and I think
Mhm.
in that way, like, YouTube makes these powerful decisions that really impact what type of videos, or what, like Matt Pat said from the video, like people watch what's put in front of them often, right? It's just like kind of human nature, and that's like the thing about YouTube is it's you more stuff. That's why the recommendation engine drives like 70% of views. Is because it's just more easy to just kind of flip through and rather than go searching for stuff.
In your book, you have a quote from Freddie Wong. Now, Freddie Wong, for those who don't know, started on YouTube 2006, sort of the master of these special effects videos and that sort of thing. And he had mentioned in 2020, he said, if you want to create content, then go for it. But if you're more of an artist type or a little more fickle in terms of what makes you happy with your creative output, it's a stifling place to be, in reference to YouTube. When a long-term creator says something like that, do you think that has an effect at YouTube, or is the feeling that it's going to be next creator up and we'll just have the next generation, or do you think that maybe that does give pause to what they're doing?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think YouTube would agree with that. Um, I do think that like it's sort of connected to a little bit. Like it's different. It's funny because it's kind of related to like the burnout question. Like I think Freddie was voicing something where he felt like it was less like I can't do this anymore, and more like this is no longer creatively fulfilling for me, right? Which is sort of related. Um, I think that YouTube is often talks about like the Mark Rober example, right? Like how many I don't know how many videos Mark Rober makes. He makes very few, and there he like invest a lot of time and energy and creativity into them. And he might be more the exception than the rule. I think the fact that he is able to put out so few videos that, and then like the ones he does are like do really well. Um, but that's often what YouTube will point to. I think they took the concerns about. It's funny there was a while when there was a conversation about burnout, maybe like beginning of the pandemic, and YouTube. They paid this therapist YouTuber Katie Morton to make videos about how to deal with burnout. They started to talk to people creators about it a lot, and then TikTok comes around and starts competing with them, and they're like, "We need you to make shorts." Everyone's like, "Shorts is like the thing to do," and like I feel like the burnout conversation has kind of disappeared. Um, I think like the cynic in me is like, Freddie Wong. At this point, they're probably like if YouTube would probably freak out if Mr. Beast quits tomorrow.
Hmm. Sure.
But the beauty of YouTube's as a business model, it's very long tail. Like there are um, like dozens of creators, but I think with like more than 10 million subscribers now, right? Like globally, so they're less dependent on like one channel and star um,
Hmm.
than like traditional Hollywood media models, and so the way they're structured, like they can kind of have people burn out and like kind of not blink an eye.
It feels like to me, when I stop and think about that, it has been a long time since there's been a viral video or something that went viral that bubbled up on YouTube. And in some regards, I almost wonder if the golden era of YouTube is behind it. And yet, from a revenue standpoint, they have controversial content somewhat under control at the moment, especially compared to a few years ago. I'm curious, from a business standpoint, is this sort of the golden era for YouTube?
I don't know. We're recording this on a what day is it? Thursday. There's a 2 days ago. They just Google released their earnings, and it was like the first time that YouTube, I believe, their sales going to drop year on year, and a lot of that their factors about the economy and their factors about like what Apple's doing. And is it the golden? Is it like this? I mean, there's a lot of YouTubers that say like the golden era ended in 2016, right, when they started to moderate. I think. I mean, I do think that like yes, there's a lot more stability than like they're not doing the kind of rapid changes around monetization and the rules like they were a few years ago. Um, I think there's an opportunity, and part of the book was to like make this argument, this case that like, I think that so much of the book ends with this conversation between Hank Green and Susan Wojcicki about like the creator economy, and Hank sort of pushing her on like, so much of YouTube's history has been like trying to basically turn YouTubers into TV stars, and they gave channels to like get Hollywood stars on YouTube that didn't work out, and they started giving money to like um, to big creators to make TV shows, and then they abandoned that plan earlier this year. And I think Kank's point is pretty valid. Is like there is this sort of middle class and this entire new economy that YouTube built, and the sort of I feel like the next era it potentially is to actually like build out like to let people make sustainable careers, and not have so much fluctuation, and find ways to like have like a healthy middle class on YouTube. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. There are moments where it feels like it's moving in that direction, and there are moments when it's not.
You'd mentioned in the book actually that the number of creators who were able to make a six-figure income from the site was once considered a possible metric. It's interesting to think what that might make YouTube
Yeah, I
look like these days.
I mean, they said well, they recently came out and um, changed the monetization program for shorts, and then they talked about how the levels they set because you have to have a certain number of views on shorts and a certain number of subscribers, and they said we kind of pick numbers that like can people like kind of give people like a living wage. I don't think I'm not sure that was their term, but something like that. Which they have not. They they haven't actually like as far as I know, they don't disclose what that like. They're not saying like, oh, this is for people that make at least six figures a year, or like so. Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
And the advertising, it'll be interesting to see what happens now with ad levels coming to Netflix and Disney, whether that affects the advertising inventory on YouTube or not. The last question I had for you, your book is called Like, Comment, Subscribe. I've mentioned the title, Like, Comment, and Subscribe, a few times in this interview. What do you think that'll do to the algorithm?
What's that? The
Will the algorithm think I'm imploring people to like, comment,
oh
and subscribe?
oh possibly. Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know how they handle kind of the calls to action. Um, I mean, that was a part of the reason I titled that, right? It's like a very familiar phrase that YouTube sort of embedded in our pop culture. Um, I don't know if they, I would love to find this out. I wonder if they treat different videos differently when because YouTube kind of wants people to have calls to action, right? They want people to, whether it's subscribe more or, make more money from merch and things like that. So maybe it'll be
Yeah.
promoted more. Who knows?
Well, we shall see, and everyone can like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see if that helps. So, thank you again, Mark Bergen. The book is Like, Comment, Subscribe: Inside YouTube's Chaotic Rise to World Domination. It's a great read. Be sure to check it out. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.